when I do mine, I will front load the honey to where I want it to end up, but I'm not afraid to back sweeten at the end if it does something like that, or if it just, if the yeast gets over ambitious, which sometimes it does, especially with the temperature swings we get here. We'll get 60-degree temperature swings in a single day, so it can be really weird. So I just I will add, but I took heart to Pete's don't add straight honey, and I make a honey water solution and add that. I go ahead and pasteurize it and add that at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you have something that's bone dry and dead, and definitely you have to try to sweeten it with whatever you got,
Yeah.
It's really amazing how much of a difference it can make sometimes, like especially with things like chocolate.
Oh, really?
The chocolate mead that I made, I used cocoa powder, and the pear wine that I always made was always really nice, and I used to make a pear melomel with the second run from that, and that was always pretty nice too. But I made the chocolate pear mead for the chocolate group brew, and when I tasted it, it had gone completely dry, and I'm like, ew, this is gross. Okay, now let's sit down and put it, because it's got the potential. It's got all these wonderful ingredients in it. So I sat down with my little jar of honey and dripped honey into it, a drip at a time, until it was good. And it didn't take that much, but when you've got something bitter like chocolate, you just need a little bit of sweetness to offset it.
Yeah, that may be where some people think that they don't like to back sweeten with honey, in that they put a whole teaspoon in there. It's amazing how small an amount makes such a huge difference.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, even just like the amount that you use just for carbonation, which we'll do on another show at some later point, which is the equivalent of like a teaspoon of sugar per beer bottle. Even that makes a huge difference in the amount of sweetness.
Yeah.
Because I've had a couple of batches that the yeast crapped out on me, so I had I had my back sweetening that I put in, plus the priming sugar. I was using a non-fermentable back sweetening so that I could ferment it so that I could bottle curb it without exploding. But we'll talk about that one some other time.
Good old corn sugar.
Yeah, actually, that does raise one of the questions from Got Meters. Mikey Moo was asking how a non-fermentable wine conditioner would work with a too-dry oak leaf mead that he had. My answer is, well, one way to figure that out. Give it a try. He's got a Ritchie's wine sweetener, which contains glycerol, propylene, glycol, and aspartame, and by his figuring, something that had 3 different sweetening ingredients might not have any one be too overpowering. I don't know if any of you have ever used anything like that.
No, I'm about to. We were talking about it earlier. I'm about to start experimenting with that. Because it's also glycerol and propylene will also do something to mouthfeel.
It will. Yeah. You're gonna get a lot more of a sort of silky mouthfeel going on, and they also provide, you get a lot more sweet for your money there. It's a whole lot less stuff required than
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, boy, that's a tough one.
Well, I mean, the only right answer is what AJ said, which is just try it.
See, yeah.
You don't have to do the whole batch. Just try a glass.
Yeah, exactly. Try it and see, and you have to post your results and let us know.
Exactly.
Because we want to know too.
Now, with something like that, I'm not sure if you're going to get much of a change in specific gravity, so you may have to do that volumetrically and figure out, you've got a sample of this size, and how much of your bottle did you add for this percentage of your batch. You may have to figure it out that way. Now, Firm Boise has got the same kind of wine conditioner I have. It's a fermentable sugar, so but it's got stabilizing chemicals in it, but you need to add it to a stabilized wine. And I've used that before, but since I mostly do meads now and I don't do very many wines, I haven't used that in several years. But again, that's the one where you have to stabilize it first.
Right.
Now, about non-fermentable sweeteners, have any of you ever used any in any of your meads?
I have played, and this was more in cordials than in meads, but I've played with using like stevia and, what was the other one I used? Was a liquid stevia, which doesn't leave the weird aftertaste that you get from powdered stevia, generally. But it was okay, but there was still an off note there that was readily detectable. So, I mean, it's kind of, your mileage may vary. It depends, I guess, on what you can taste and what you're willing to put up with. It's like the difference between a regular Coke and a Diet Coke.
Mm-hmm. What are you willing to tolerate?
Because I remember a day when there was at some point, because I'm a Diet Dr. Pepper fan. I don't drink soda much anymore, but when I do, it's Diet Dr. Pepper. And I remember when I used to drink regular Dr. Peppers, and my first Diet Dr. Pepper was like, ew, bleh, and then somewhere along the line, it was okay. So I got used to it, and now if I drink a regular one, it's like, oh my God, there's so much sugar in this, so it's a whole reaction in the other direction. So it's like you become nose blind, basically, to it after a certain amount of time. But a lot of that, I mean, if you're in a place where you can't tolerate the sugar content, like maybe you're diabetic. I have a friend who loves mead, but he's diabetic, and that was the guy I was making the cordial with the sweeteners that don't mess with your sugar levels. And it had the aftertaste, but then he could drink it.
Yeah, now, did you when you used the stevia,
alcohol and diabetes.
Yeah, it does, but he was able to.
Careful.
Yeah, I mean, he knew what he could get away with for alcohol, but it was sugar that really blew him out of the water. So, I mean, it was one of those ones that he knew where his limits were with one, but the other one, there was nothing he could do. So, yeah.
And I think with diabetes, everybody's different too, because I've had some diabetics tell me they can only have dry wines, and some tell me they can only have wines with a little bit of sugar in them. So, I think everybody must be different, or their doctors are all of different opinions on the matter.
Or they're dreaming and wishing, and that is some of them. I've got friends that are like that. I've got friends who shouldn't be drinking at all, who go, yeah, I can have a glass of wine. It's like, no, really, you can't. You really shouldn't, but they do, so, yeah. It's... I
was wondering, though, when you played with the stevia, did you use the little drops with glycerin, or did you have the drops in ethanol?
Both. I tried both, and because I had some of both kinds. The ones in the alcohol suspension had more of the off flavor. The glycerin, the off flavor seems to be ameliorated by the glycerin, and I don't know why that is.
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because that is exactly the same thing I found when I was playing with it.
Yeah, because I used to use it to
anybody who wants to play with stevia, get it with the glycerin, and I think the glycerin's got a little bit of sweetness to it as well.
It does, yeah. Glycerin is in and of itself is a sweetener. It's just a mild one, but now brands used to have a really good glycerin-based sweetener. I used to get it from Vitacost, and they had it in like 12-ounce bottles, so you got like a lot of it, And that was what I used to sweeten things. It's what I still don't use sugar. I use stevia for sweetening my tea and stuff like that. So that was my go-to for a very long time, because it didn't have that weird aftertaste to it. Another one that might be worth trying, and it's going to cost you because the stuff's expensive, is stevia in the raw. There doesn't seem to be an aftertaste, and I don't know what they're doing there. But it's a possibility. And malitol is another one, though. That's a watch out, because that's one of the ones that can make nasty things happen at the other end.
Yeah, I've got some friends who had that.
What's stevia in the raw?
Stevia in the raw is a brand that they make here in the States, and I don't know if you guys can get it there, but it's
I can get it here. There's a company that makes sugar in the raw, which is sort of a raw sugar.
Manny,
that,
look it up.
Hasn't been processed.
I don't have to. It's turbinado sugar.
Is
sugar
it turbinado?
Yeah.
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 No,
so
it
I don't know what
sugar in the raw is turbinado, but stevia in the raw is a different thing. It's stevia, and what I'm looking for. But it's the same
company, and it's trying to make something that tastes a little bit better and is a little bit less processed, I guess.
Or something. Yeah. Well, they're basically capitalizing. They're basically capitalizing on the
sugar in the raw.
On the sugar in the raw. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like the princess and the pea with any kind of artificial sweetener. I don't like them, and I can immediately detect them.
Most people can if they, especially if they don't use them regularly.
Well, yeah. I found that I've got thresholds. Like there was a brand of soft drink that would use part sugar and part aspartame and there's potassium something or other.
Sorbate? No.
I can't remember.
Phenylketone?
But
Phenylketone?
No, I don't think so. There's two common ones, and they would use a combination of the two, and that actually wasn't bad because it was below my taste threshold. And I also find with Splenda, I've used that in my brews as well for sweetening stuff that I wanted to bottle carbonate. But the thing with that is you got to be really, really sparing with it and use like half of what you think you should use. Otherwise, it's very evident that that's what you've used.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what I have found by using Splenda, because I've got several friends who are either problems with sugar or diabetic. So I've done a fair amount of baking with it, and I've tried it in the fermenting and stuff. And that's what I found with it is less is better.
Stevia in the raw is stevia extract and a bulking agent, either dextrose or maltodextrin. In there, they have a baker's bag product that is bulk.
That's sugar.
Corn sugar. Dextrose is corn sugar.
Yeah, dextrose is corn sugar. And that's their
not non-fermentable.
Yeah, well, and somehow it's 0 calorie. I don't know how they do that. In their bulk product, it's stevia co-dried with maltodextrin, and they use it for that. And then it's they use, I think, dextrose in the packet product. Yeah, so that's.
No, but in my opinion, unless you're using it to for somebody who has either diabetic or sugar issues, the most of the non-fermentables, with the exception maybe of glycerin, and I wouldn't do
it. No,
it's
going to throw your flavor profile off, and it may throw it way off. I mean, if the question is in regards to having less sugar in your mead, then make a dry mead. And go for that. If you're not into dry traditionals, then make a dry melomel or a dry metheglin. They can be extremely good.
Yeah, like I would follow up my question to Mikey, asking him why he wants to use a non-fermentable wine conditioner. Why not just stabilize and backsweeten?
Yeah.
The only reason I ever wanted to do it, and I found using smaller amounts, as you were saying, but of multiple different kinds of artificial sweeteners worked. The only reason I ever wanted to do it so it would finish sweet, even though I fermented it dry, and I could just front load absolutely everything and set and forget. But as I don't really do that anymore, I don't do that anymore.
So that's fake it till you make it, right?
Well, the other thing, too, is if you don't want to stabilize for whatever reason, because some people can taste it and some people, I know I have a friend, actually his whole family gets migraines from sulfites. So, if I ever give them anything, I got to make sure that there's no sulfites in it. And so, every now and then there's a reason that you don't want to stabilize a batch. And if you ferment it dry, then the only way you're going to be able to backsweeten it without the yeast continuing on to, you'll have to find some way of stopping the yeast, either that or you have to step feed it till it taps out. But if you're aiming for something that's not as alcoholic as you can possibly make it, and you want it to finish a little bit sweet, and you can't stabilize it for whatever reason, then it does limit your options, and that is a reason why I could see why you might want to use a non-fermentable sweetener or something like that. I can totally see why you would. I try not to, but I have the reason why I would, which is because I don't want